The snow whipped across the frozen valley like sharp silver knives. The wind howled through jagged ice spires, carrying a chill so deep that even the strongest machines shivered. Beneath the gray sky, a brood of dragons circled slowly, their massive wings cutting through the air with soundless power. Their scales shimmered in muted colors, icy blues, frosted whites, and pale silvers, but none of that beauty could hide the sorrow in their eyes. One of their young had fallen. The hatchling was small, barely bigger than a human child, but it had been full of promise. Its scales had glinted like dawn when it first took flight, and it had played among the others with energy that made the adults smile. Now it lay still in the snow, its tiny body cold, half buried in frozen crystals. The dragons cried out in a sound that was neither roar nor whimper. It was something deeper, older, a sound that shook the ice beneath them. The valley seemed to answer with an echo, as if the world itself mourned. The eldest dragon, whose scales were streaked with silver and frost, hovered near the body. Its long neck curved protectively, and its eyes, bright and intelligent, watched over the fallen hatchling. The elder's wings beat slowly, creating small gusts that swirled snow around them. It called to the others with a low, vibrating hum, a song of grief that only dragons could understand. The younger dragons gathered nearby, their heads bowed, tails curling tightly around their bodies. Each one let out soft cries, small sounds of sorrow that mingled with the wind. No human had ever witnessed such mourning. Spacefarers who had traveled near this icy world spoke of dragons as terrifying hunters, creatures of fire and strength. Yet here the galaxy would have seen something different. The dragon's grief was raw, honest, and quiet. There was no threat, no anger, only loss. The cold made the silence even heavier. Snow fell steadily, covering the hatchling like a fragile blanket. In the distance, a faint shape moved through the storm. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a small disturbance in the endless white. The dragons noticed it immediately, their keen senses alert to every motion. It was a human, a lone figure trudging through the snow, bundled in thick layers, leaving faint tracks behind. The human moved slowly, struggling against the wind, his head bowed against the storm. The dragons watched, uncertain. Humans had caused destruction before. Many had hunted or driven dragons from their homes. But this one did not run. The human stopped at the edge of the valley, far enough to be safe but close enough to be seen. He removed a small device from his pack and switched it on, sending a soft blue light into the sky. It was a beacon, simple but clear. The light flickered against the snow and the scales of the dragons, reflecting in the eyes of the brood. The eldest dragon tilted its head, curious but cautious. The other dragons remained still, wings partially open, ready to protect the fallen hatchling. The human spoke softly, his voice carried by the wind but strangely clear. He did not shout or threaten. He called out to the dragons in words they could not understand, but the tone was calm, gentle, and careful. The eldest dragon lowered its head slightly, sensing something different in this human. Unlike others, this one did not carry weapons or machines of war. The human only had his warmth, his presence, and a small pack of tools that clinked quietly as he moved. Step by step, the human approached. He fell once in the snow, but he got up, determined. The dragons watched each movement, wings twitching, ready to strike if he came too close. Yet there was no anger in the human, only careful, deliberate progress. The storm around them seemed to slow, as if the world itself recognized the importance of this moment. Finally, the human reached the hatchling. He knelt beside the tiny dragon, brushing snow from its frozen body. He checked the small creature with gentle hands, his fingers tracing the icy scales. The eldest dragon lowered its massive head closer, curious and cautious. The younger dragons in the brood edged forward, wings brushing lightly against the snow, but none made a sound. The valley held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The human worked quietly, speaking to the hatchling in low tones. His voice was calm, almost musical, carrying no threat. The eldest dragon's eyes softened, and the hum of mourning slowed. The young dragons watched intently, as if trying to understand why this small creature of flesh could be so fearless in front of such immense beings. Snow continued to fall, layering the valley in white, but the grief that had seemed endless began to shift slightly, turning into something else: curiosity, wonder, and a cautious hope. Hours passed as the human stayed beside the hatchling, his hands keeping the small body warm. The eldest dragon's wings moved to shield him from the worst of the wind. The storm still raged around them, but within the circle of dragons, a fragile peace grew. The brood's cries quieted, replaced by soft murmurs, low vibrations that resonated through the snow and ice. The human's presence had changed the moment, altering the rhythm of loss into something new. Even in the coldest, harshest corner of the galaxy, life could persist. The dragons, once sure that this young one was lost forever, now sensed the faintest pulse of hope. The human did not promise miracles. He did not fight or challenge. He simply stayed, simply cared, simply risked everything by standing with creatures far larger and older than himself. And for the first time in days, the hatchling twitched its tiny claw, stirring beneath the snow. The dragons lowered their heads, eyes wide, wings folding slightly. The eldest dragon exhaled slowly, warm air melting some of the frost from the hatchling's scales. The brood leaned closer, soft hums vibrating through the frozen valley. The storm still howled around them, but inside this circle of ice and dragons, a fragile hope began to bloom, and the sound of mourning began to turn toward something else. Patience, attention, and a watchful waiting for what might come next. The human looked up at the dragons, a quiet smile on his face, tired but determined. He had crossed a frozen world alone, faced creatures of legend, and yet he did not flinch. He had come for one purpose, to give life a chance. And now, beneath the frozen sky, something remarkable was beginning, a bond that neither snow nor ice nor time could break. The storm continued to whip across the valley, but the dragons' mourning had quieted. Their massive bodies moved slowly over the snow, wings partially folded, eyes still fixed on the small human kneeling beside the hatchling. The eldest dragon lowered its head closer, nostrils flaring as it examined the stranger. The human did not move quickly. He did not shout, nor did he wave his arms to threaten. He simply worked. The hatchling shivered under his hands. Its small chest rose and fell unevenly, and frost covered its fragile wings. The human carefully brushed snow from its scales, his fingers warm against the cold skin. He pulled a small device from his pack, a tiny heater powered by a long-lasting energy cell, and placed it near the hatchling. A soft glow spread warmth through the frozen body. The dragons watched, their heads tilted, wings slightly trembling with curiosity and caution. "You're alive," the human whispered, his voice soft and calm, almost like a song. "Just hold on. We'll get through this." He worked steadily, showing no fear despite the dragon's massive presence. One of the younger dragons leaned closer, its breath fogging in the cold air, wings twitching nervously. The human looked up at it and smiled gently, a silent signal that he meant no harm. The eldest dragon made a low rumble, a sound like rolling thunder under ice. It had never seen a human do this before. Humans were usually fast to flee or fight when confronted with dragons. Yet this one had stayed, kneeling beside a dragon hatchling in the middle of a frozen valley during a storm. Its courage was strange, unfamiliar, and powerful. The elder dragon's eyes narrowed as it considered the human, trying to read his thoughts. The human reached into his pack again, pulling out a small recorder. He activated it and a blue light flickered, showing logs from old mining missions in the area. He spoke into it softly, translating the data into vibrations that the dragons could sense, a technique learned from observing dragon responses in old simulations. The logs revealed that the hatchling had been hurt by a natural energy surge during the orbital storm, not by humans. The dragons paused, heads tilting, listening. Their low hums of sorrow slowed, replaced with quiet attention. Hours passed, but the human did not tire. He adjusted the heater, wrapped small thermal blankets around the hatchling, and even removed some ice from its tiny claws. The younger dragons in the brood edged closer, curious but careful. They had never seen a creature so small take such risks. One of them stretched a wing, brushing lightly over the human's shoulder. He flinched for a moment but stayed still, speaking softly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon froze, then slowly retracted its wing. The storm worsened again, blowing snow across the valley in thick sheets. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, but the human did not leave. He adjusted his hood, squinting against the cold, and continued to work. The eldest dragon watched him silently, wings moving slightly to shield the hatchling and the human from the worst of the wind. No one in the galaxy had ever seen humans act like this in the presence of dragons. Others would have screamed, fled, or attacked. This one stayed, calm and brave, earning a cautious respect even from the eldest of the brood. Suddenly the hatchling twitched. Its tiny head lifted slightly, and its eyes fluttered open. The human smiled, exhausted but relieved. He stroked the hatchling gently, whispering encouragements that were too soft for human ears to catch clearly. The dragons hummed, a sound that was part awe, part warning, part wonder. They had mourned for this young one, thinking it lost forever. Now the human had shown them something new. The eldest dragon lowered its massive head closer, nostrils brushing the human's hair. The warmth from its breath mixed with the heater's glow, melting some of the ice that had formed on the hatchling's scales. The human did not flinch. He leaned slightly forward, brushing a few snowflakes off the dragon's snout. It was a gesture of trust and respect. The elder dragon exhaled slowly, a plume of warm mist surrounding them, and the younger dragons relaxed just a little. Night fell over the valley and the storm began to ease. The snow softened into gentle flakes, drifting down like sparks from the stars above. The human stayed with the hatchling, adjusting blankets and monitoring its weak pulses. The dragons circled above, wings extended, keeping guard silently. They did not attack. They did not chase. For the first time, they allowed a human to stay in their presence during a moment of vulnerability. The eldest dragon's eyes softened, a subtle acceptance forming. Finally, the hatchling moved again, curling slightly against the warmth. The human smiled, his energy almost gone, but he did not stop. He whispered to the dragons, a simple sound that carried no threat. The brood leaned closer, sensing the calm courage that radiated from this small creature. The valley, which had been filled with cries of sorrow, was now quiet. Only the soft hum of dragons and the gentle rustle of snow filled the air. The human's voice carried over the valley, not in words but in the tone of life itself. He did not run. He did not fight. He simply stayed, offering warmth and hope where there had been despair. And the dragons, ancient and powerful, began to understand that not all humans were destructive. Some could show courage, care, and compassion even in the most dangerous places in the galaxy. By morning the storm had passed. The snow glistened under the rising light of distant stars. The hatchling moved more strongly now, testing its wings gently. The human, still kneeling, looked up at the dragons surrounding him. Their eyes were no longer only filled with grief, they were filled with curiosity and quiet respect. The eldest dragon hummed softly, acknowledging the bravery of this human. He had not run. He had not given in to fear. He had risked everything for the smallest life in the galaxy. The valley, once filled with sorrow and the cries of mourning dragons, now held a strange, delicate peace. The human's actions had changed everything, planting a seed of hope in the hearts of creatures who had never known mercy from outsiders. The hatchling stirred again, and the dragons watched closely, sensing that life had returned, fragile but strong. For the first time in centuries, a human had earned the attention, trust, and cautious respect of a dragon brood. The human who did not run had become more than a visitor. He had become a witness to life, grief, and the fragile power of care. And in the frozen valley, under the shadow of ancient wings, the first steps toward something extraordinary began. The valley was calm, but the wind still carried a biting cold. The snow had softened into a thick blanket over the ice, and the hatchling stirred weakly beneath the human's careful hands. The human did not sit back or rest. He adjusted the small heater and gently wrapped the hatchling in thermal blankets, making sure it could breathe. His fingers moved carefully, tracing over fragile scales that were still stiff from frost. Every motion was slow, precise, and full of care. The eldest dragon hovered closer, wings folded slightly to keep warm. It had never seen a human act like this. Humans usually ran, hid, or fought, but this one stayed. It was not afraid, not angry, not careless. The human's courage was quiet, steady, and strange to the dragons. They had watched many humans pass through their territory, but none had shown patience or care like this. One of the younger dragons stepped forward, eyes wide with curiosity. Its wing brushed the edge of the human's coat, and he flinched but did not pull away. He spoke softly, words carried in the rhythm of life, not command. "I won't hurt you," he whispered. "I only want to help." The dragon froze, then slowly pulled back. The others watched, tilting their heads, sensing something new in the human's heart. The hatchling moved again, tiny claws twitching against the snow. Its chest rose unevenly, but there was a pulse, faint yet steady. The human smiled, exhausted but determined. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small medical device, a scanner designed to read bioenergy. Its screen flickered, showing weak signals from the hatchling. He adjusted the device carefully, sending warmth and low pulses of energy to stabilize the tiny life. The dragons hummed softly, vibrations traveling through the snow and ice. They were unsure, but their mourning had quieted. The eldest dragon leaned down, nostrils flaring as it sensed the energy around the hatchling. The human did not flinch, even when the dragon's breath created a sudden rush of hot air. He spoke gently, "It's okay. You can trust me." The dragon paused, almost studying him. Minutes stretched into hours. The human's hands were cold, his body shaking, but he did not stop. He had no orders, no command, no reason beyond the life of a fragile hatchling. Every move was a risk. One wrong step, one sudden motion and he could be crushed, injured, or worse. But he did not think of fear. He thought only of warmth, life, and hope. The dragons watched silently, wings half extended, sensing something new. The eldest dragon shifted, lowering a wing to shield the human and the hatchling from a sudden gust. The human glanced up, a small smile forming despite his exhaustion. He reached out and touched the wing, a gesture of understanding. The dragon did not move. It had never felt a human show such courage without expecting reward or retreat. For a moment the valley was silent, filled only with soft hums and the gentle crackle of ice under wind. The human continued to work, adjusting the heater, brushing ice from the hatchling's fragile claws, and speaking softly to the small creature. "You can do this," he said. "You have to. Just hold on." The hatchling's chest moved more steadily now. Its eyes flickered open, revealing tiny, bright pupils filled with confusion and life. The dragons leaned closer, sensing the change. They had mourned this hatchling as lost, yet now it moved. One young dragon stretched its neck toward the human, nostrils quivering. The human held up a hand gently, showing calm. "I won't harm you," he whispered. The dragon paused, then slowly drew back. The others followed, creating a quiet space around the human and the hatchling. For the first time, the dragons accepted the presence of a human in their mourning circle. The storm outside the valley was fading. Snowflakes drifted slowly down, sparkling in the weak light from distant stars. The human remained with the hatchling, steadying its movements and monitoring its weak pulses. The dragon's hums became softer, almost thoughtful, as if they were reflecting on what they had just witnessed. Courage was not just about strength or fire, it could be calm, careful, and gentle. Finally, the hatchling moved more strongly, stretching its tiny wings and testing its legs. The human smiled, hands still steady, adjusting blankets to keep it warm. He looked up at the dragons, whose eyes were no longer only sad, they were curious, almost respectful. The eldest dragon's hum was soft, steady, and warm, a subtle acknowledgement of what the human had done. The younger dragons edged closer, their tails curling in cautious interest. The human stood slowly, careful not to startle anyone. He spoke in a calm voice, carrying over the valley. "You are safe now," he said. "We can get through this together." The dragons tilted their heads, sensing the truth in his words. For the first time they felt a fragile hope replace grief. The valley, once filled with mourning cries, now held a quiet tension, a delicate balance between life and ice. The hatchling took a small step forward, unsteady but determined. The human knelt to offer a hand, and the young dragon touched it lightly, sensing warmth and trust. The dragons watched, amazed at the courage of this small human. They had mourned for days, believing the hatchling lost forever, yet this human had risked everything without hesitation or thought of reward. Night deepened over the valley. The stars glimmered faintly above and the wind eased. The human remained beside the hatchling, offering warmth, comfort, and hope. The dragons, ancient and powerful, had begun to understand a truth they had never known. Courage could come in many forms, and sometimes it came from the smallest, most unlikely of creatures. By morning, the hatchling's strength had returned just enough to test its wings again. The human smiled, exhaustion written on his face, but satisfaction in his heart. The dragons circled silently above, watching the human and the hatchling with attention and cautious respect. The valley, once filled with cries and mourning, now held a fragile peace, a moment of understanding that bridged species and worlds. The human who risked everything for a tiny life had changed more than just one hatchling. He had shifted the hearts of an entire brood, showing that humans could act with courage, patience, and care, even in the harshest corners of the galaxy. The dragons hummed softly, a sound of approval, of curiosity, and of quiet wonder. Life had returned, fragile but unbroken, and the bond between human and dragon had begun. The morning light broke over the frozen valley, casting pale gold across the snow and ice. The storm had passed, leaving the world quiet except for the soft hum of the dragon brood circling above. The hatchling stirred again, its tiny wings twitching in the cold air. The human was still kneeling beside it, careful and steady, wrapping the small dragon in thermal blankets while checking its pulse. His face was pale from the cold and exhaustion, but his eyes held determination. The eldest dragon hovered nearby, massive wings beating slowly to keep a gentle wind from sweeping the hatchling away. It had watched the human through the night, unsure whether to trust him. Now, seeing the hatchling move with even the slightest strength, it felt a new emotion: hope. The dragons had mourned for days, thinking the little one was lost forever, but now something miraculous was happening before their eyes. The human noticed a faint pulse of energy in the hatchling, almost invisible to the naked eye but clear through the small scanner he carried. He whispered softly, "You're stronger than you think. Keep trying." His hands were warm against the dragon's fragile scales, and he kept close watch on its breathing. Every twitch of the tiny claws, every breath, made his heart beat faster with relief. The younger dragons leaned closer, curiosity overcoming sorrow. They had never seen a human act like this. One of them stretched a wing and lightly brushed the snow around the hatchling, careful not to disturb it. The human glanced at the dragon and smiled, nodding slightly. "I see you. You're safe too," he said quietly. The dragon froze for a moment, sensing his calm tone. It pulled its wing back slowly as if accepting the human's words. The eldest dragon exhaled gently, sending warm air across the hatchling. Snow melted from its frozen scales, leaving them smooth and soft. The human did not flinch. He continued to encourage the hatchling, softly stroking its tiny head. "That's it. You can do it. One more breath. One more move." Slowly the hatchling raised its small wings, trembling but moving. It tried to lift its head, and the human's smile widened. The other dragons moved closer, forming a protective circle around the pair. The eldest lowered its massive head until its eyes were level with the human, watching every careful motion. It had never felt gratitude like this before. The human did not demand respect or fear. He earned it through patience and care. The brood's grief slowly began to transform, turning into cautious hope. The hatchling's breathing grew steadier, and it lifted its tiny body slightly from the snow. The human adjusted the blankets and heater to support the movement. "Good. Very good," he whispered, speaking more to the hatchling than to anyone else. The eldest dragon gave a low, humming sound, almost like approval. The younger dragons joined in, soft vibrations mixing with the gentle sounds of the thawing valley. The human reached into his pack and produced a small vial of nutrient gel, carefully feeding the hatchling a tiny portion. The hatchling nibbled weakly, encouraged by the warmth and safety surrounding it. The dragons observed, fascinated by this tiny human's willingness to risk himself for another species. They had never known such behavior. Courage and care could exist together in this way. Hours passed, and the hatchling began to move more freely. Its wings stretched, tiny claws testing the snow beneath it. The human stayed close, hands ready to catch or support it if needed. The dragon's low hums had quieted, but their attention remained sharp. They had learned to trust slowly and to wait. The valley, once filled with cries of grief, now held a soft rhythm of life and cautious optimism. The eldest dragon lowered its head even more, bringing a wing close to shelter the human and the hatchling from a sudden cold gust. The human looked up, meeting its gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, only calm and gentle courage. "Thank you," he whispered, not fully knowing if the dragon understood, but sensing that it did. The dragon tilted its head, a small movement that seemed like acknowledgement. By late afternoon, the hatchling could move its legs and wings more confidently. It lifted its small body from the snow, testing balance. The human supported it with his hands, whispering encouragements all the while. The brood watched closely, some tilting heads, some nudging snow gently as if helping. Even in their mourning, they were learning patience and compassion. The human finally allowed himself a small rest, leaning back on the snow and catching his breath. The hatchling nestled close to him, weak but alive. The dragon's hums surrounded them, a chorus of cautious hope. The eldest dragon's eyes softened further. It had mourned, it had feared, but now it realized that even in loss, life could be restored. And this human, so small and fragile compared to them, had shown the greatest courage of all. As night fell, the valley glowed with soft moonlight reflecting off the ice. The hatchling's tiny eyes followed the human's every movement, sensing the bond forming between them. The dragons circled overhead, watching silently but protectively. The sorrow that had hung over the valley for days had faded. In its place was hope, a fragile, delicate hope that life could survive even in the coldest, harshest places. The human whispered to the hatchling, "We made it. You're safe now." The tiny dragon nuzzled his hand, trembling but alive. The brood of dragons hummed, a deep vibration that filled the valley. The eldest dragon's eyes met the human's once more, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had witnessed something rare, a life preserved through care and courage, not strength or fire. The hatchling took a small step forward, testing its wings again. The human smiled, exhausted but relieved. He reached out, supporting the tiny creature as it moved. The younger dragons watched intently, and the eldest hovered protectively, wings spread. The valley, once a place of grief and mourning, had become a place of hope and new beginnings. Life, even in its smallest form, had returned. The human had risked everything for this fragile hatchling. And the dragons, ancient and wise, had learned that courage, care, and hope could exist together, forming bonds that not even ice and snow could break. For the first time in days, the valley was at peace. The mourning had ended. The hope had begun. The sun rose over the frozen valley, painting the ice and snow with pale gold light. The storm had fully passed, leaving a quiet calm. The hatchling moved on its own now, small wings stretching and legs testing the snow. The human stayed beside it, still careful but relaxed, a gentle smile on his face. The dragons circled above, their eyes watching every motion, wings spreading slowly in the soft morning wind. The eldest dragon lowered its massive head, bringing its warm breath close to the hatchling. The small dragon shivered slightly but did not move away. The human reached out a hand, letting the hatchling nuzzle it. The dragons hummed, a low vibration that filled the air. The sound was not mournful now but steady and calm. The valley, which had been filled with grief for so long, seemed to breathe with them. The human stood carefully, stretching his tired legs. He looked at the brood of dragons, their scales shimmering in the sunlight. He knew they could destroy him if they wished, yet they did not. Their curiosity and respect had replaced anger and grief. The eldest dragon's eyes met his, deep and ancient, and for a moment something passed between them, an understanding that life could be preserved and shared, even across species. The hatchling tried to hop forward, wobbly but determined. The human knelt quickly, supporting it with both hands. "Good job," he whispered softly. The small dragon looked up at him, bright eyes full of trust. Around them, the younger dragons leaned in slightly, watching every gentle movement. They seemed to sense that this human had earned his place among them, not as a hunter or intruder, but as a friend. For hours, the human taught the hatchling to stretch its wings, helping it balance and move. The dragon stayed close, protective but calm. Occasionally, the eldest dragon exhaled a warm gust, melting the snow where the hatchling stepped, creating a safe path. The human did not flinch, speaking softly to the elder. "Thank you for trusting me." The dragon's eye narrowed in a slow, almost imperceptible nod, as if acknowledging the words. By midday, the hatchling was moving more confidently. It hopped and flapped its tiny wings, sometimes stumbling, sometimes balancing. The human clapped softly, encouraging it. "That's it. Keep going." The dragons watched quietly, their hums mingling with the snow's soft crunch beneath the hatchling's claws. The eldest dragon's attention remained fixed on the human, as though trying to understand the courage and care that such a small creature could show. The human looked around the valley. The snow sparkled, and the ice cliffs reflected the sunlight in millions of tiny prisms. The dragons circled overhead, wings slicing through the crisp air. He realized that this valley, once filled with grief and mourning, had become a place of hope and new beginnings. His presence had changed something ancient and powerful. The dragons, who had never known mercy from humans, had learned trust through his care. The hatchling suddenly flapped its wings and leaped into the air, small but strong enough to hover briefly. The human cheered softly, holding out his hand. The little dragon landed gently, trembling with excitement. The eldest dragon lowered its head, nudging the hatchling gently with its snout, a sign of approval. The younger dragons joined, brushing their wings over the snow, creating a protective circle around the human and hatchling. The human smiled, exhausted but joyful. He knelt beside the hatchling, brushing frost from its small scales. "You did it. You're going to be fine now." The dragons hummed, a deep vibration that seemed to fill the entire valley. It was not sadness or warning anymore. It was calm, steady, and almost like a song of life. The human realized that in helping the hatchling, he had earned something extraordinary, the respect of a dragon brood, something no human had ever received before. Night began to fall, and the stars appeared above the frozen cliffs. The dragons circled, their scales reflecting starlight. The hatchling nestled close to the human, warm despite the cold air. The eldest dragon hovered above, massive wings partially folded, eyes bright and attentive. The human reached out a hand, touching the snout of the elder gently. The dragon did not pull back. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Words were not needed. Trust, courage, and respect passed between them quietly. The hatchling moved against the human, tiny wings stretching toward the sky. He laughed softly, a sound warm and human, and whispered, "You're ready." The dragons watched silently, not leaving, not retreating, only observing. For the first time the valley felt like a safe home. The grief of the past days had been replaced with hope, trust, and a bond that could last across worlds. The human finally stood, stretching, and looked around. The dragons had formed a loose circle, protective but patient. He knew he could leave if he wished, but he did not want to. He had come for the hatchling, and now he had something more, a bond with creatures older and stronger than he could imagine. The valley was quiet except for the soft hums of dragons and the gentle rustle of snow in the wind. Stars glimmered above, and the snow sparkled like diamonds in the moonlight. The human knelt once more, touching the hatchling and whispering gently, "We'll see the world together, little one." The hatchling nuzzled his hand, and the dragons hummed softly around them. In that moment, the frozen valley, once full of sorrow, was alive with hope, trust, and the quiet beginning of a friendship that would span species and worlds. The human stayed with the dragons and hatchling through the night, warmth spreading from body to body, from wing to hand. He had risked himself, and through patience, courage, and care, he had changed the hearts of ancient beings. Life had returned to the valley, fragile yet unbroken. The dragons, the hatchling, and the human were no longer just survivors. They were a family in the snow, bound by trust, care, and the quiet magic of courage. As the first light of a new day appeared over the icy cliffs, the human stood and looked at the dragons circling above. The hatchling flapped its small wings confidently, landing beside him. The eldest dragon lowered its head in a subtle nod, acknowledging the bond formed between them. The younger dragons hummed softly, wings brushing snow gently, forming a protective ring around the small human and the hatchling. For the first time in centuries, humans and dragons had shared a moment of peace, trust, and understanding. The valley, once a place of mourning and loss, was now alive with hope. The human had risked everything to save a tiny life, and in doing so, had forged a bond written not in words, but in ice, stars, and courage. And that bond, fragile yet unbreakable, would endure across time and space.